Hello, I'm Phil Morris, the Time and Time photographer. As promised, this is a follow-up to my blog post about panos from raw images dated February 2nd, 2010 on timeandtime.com. What we have here is 8 images that I took in succession to create a pano. And all these images were taken using manual settings. For more detail on that, look at the Photography Tip of the Week number 23 from August 23rd, 2009. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these 8 images and we're going to open them up in Camera Raw. I'll take just a moment. Now, what we want to do is we want to make a correction to all of these images at once, but we can't really do that. So we have to pick one image that is the most representative or has the biggest dynamic range. And this one right here, we've had the sun and we have the darkness of the tree line. And so this one happens to have the biggest dynamic range. In your image, if you don't have something like this, just find the image that really has your subject in it and work with that, and then we will synchronize all the images afterwards. So the first thing I do is I'm going to go over here and go to the camera calibration, and in this case I'll either pick camera portrait for the profile or landscape, and in this case I like landscape a lot better. Now let's go back to the exposure settings, and we want to play around with the temperature, and the temperature to me it seems to be a little bit on the hot side, so I'm going to crank this down to about 4200, and the tint seems to be a bit off. Alright, 11. Now, I know you'll be tempted to go through and hit auto here, and I've done that in the past as well to see what sort of settings we get, but since we're dealing with a bunch of images at once, it's probably best to just go through and go top, down, and take them one at a time. Now in this case, exposure looks pretty good. I've got the darkness that I want, I've got the brightness that I want, so that looks good. But I want to try to bring back as much as I can in the brights, and it looks like 27, 26 looks pretty good. Now this is most important. This is the main reason why we're using raw images here, because you really don't get the same level of depth from trying to pull back information from a JPEG. The fill light, I want to keep all this dark, so I'm not going to do anything with the fill light. And the blacks, I maybe bump it up a little bit. As far as brightness, the brightness looks good. The contrast, I'm going to crank up the contrast a little bit to give it a bit more punch. Yeah, 31 looks pretty good. Now, if you've seen any of my videos before, you'll know that these numbers 30, 15, and 7, after a long time of dealing with my camera, I found that these numbers work the best just for my camera. Your camera may be different, so you need to figure out if which settings work best for you, and then once you've got them, they pretty much stay the same for every image. Let's go over to the tone curve. Now what I want to do here is I want to really brighten up the sun. So I'm going to take the highlights and I'm going to crank the highlight up a little bit more. 23 looks good. Now in this case I want to have a nice little ramp down through here, and there's nothing special or tricky about that. It's just the highlights are the brightest spots, the lights are the next level down, and I want them to be a little bit brighter. The darks are fine where they are, but I want the shadows to get really dark. So I'm going to crank those down to about -13. And that's going to give me the total contrast between light and dark there. We're not going to do anything with the sharpening. I like the sharpening settings as they are right now. Now, the hue, saturation, and luminance. In this case, I took this set of images with a polarizing filter, so I need to make some changes to kind of get the colors back to what they were. And it's really because it was much brighter than what I see right now, and some of the colors aren't quite right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the hue of the orange, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit more to the red, because there really wasn't a lot of orange, and the yellows were kind of non-existent as well. So I'm going to bring those down to the orange level. And then you take a look at the snow here, and the snow really isn't blue enough, because when it got that dark, it just uh, the snow had that orange glow on the center streak, but the rest of it was very blue. Now that's about right for the hues. And now I'm going to go into the saturation, and really the orange and the yellows were the only things that I needed to boost, because they yeah, right about there, because this was a very, very orange sunset. Now, since we've changed the hue over here so that the oranges are more red, the saturation makes the oranges, which are red, more red. Now, luminance is kind of a brightness control. Now, the oranges here are very, very bright, and they were much deeper when I saw them. So I'm going to crank this down to about minus 34, 35. Yeah, that looks good. And the yellows, which are now orange, I need to bring those down as well. And about minus 24 looks about right. Now that gives me a really, really deep orange, and that's exactly the sunset that I remember seeing. But the blues are a bit on the bright side, so let me crank those down a little bit as well and get them a little bit darker. So there you have the image, and this is exactly what I remember seeing. I had a very, very blue ground, I had a very, very orange sunset, and there's a lot of punch in this sky. Now what we need to do is we need to translate all these settings to all the other images. So with this still selected as our primary image, you click Select All and you hit Synchronize. Now if you remember all the settings that you did, you can go through and pick which ones you set and all that. But in this case, I just have them all checked except for crop, spot removal, and local adjustments. I just want to synchronize all of them. And it'll only take a moment, and then every last one of these images is now set to the same settings. And now all you do is you hit Done, and you will see all these update. And since they're all currently selected, you can go under Tools, go to Photoshop, and do a photo merge. Now I'm not actually going to do the photo merge processing here because it's going to take it a while, but I will bring this up to show you that basically all I do is I just leave it at auto and let it go, and when I'm done we'll hit, normally I would hit OK, but I've already done the processing of that image, and that's the one right here. And we'll bring that up, and that is the final stitched image. Well, once again, my name is Phil Morris from timeandtime.com, and thank you for listening.